how did we get here? He was next in line to be the deputy chief or maybe even the chief of the Perth Amboy Police Department. I knew him by face because he would always come inside our store with his partner while they made their rounds on foot, back when police presence wasn't an option, but a must. It wasn't until 20 years later, during the November 2020 elections, to be exact, that I finally learned his name. Now synonymous with a suspension on allegations of leaking a police report of a mayoral candidate to the opposition. It is June 2022, and I get a call from a friend telling me that Captain Pellot has mentioned my initials and also my beard, and that he's willing to sit down with anyone to tell his truth. Who are you, and what are you?
Well, my name is, just one second. Mi nombre es Miguel Pellot Jr. My friends call me Goody at work. I was called Miguel or Captain. But one thing I want you to know is that hopefully by the time we finish this interview, I will no longer be called Mr. Boring.
So what made you want to become a cop?
Well, that answer goes back a long time ago. Well, just basically, my family, we're big time into law enforcement. I have multiple cousins working for either the FBI, Secret Service. My grandfather was a police officer for over 30 years in Puerto Rico. Currently, I have family in New Jersey, Sayreville, Woodbridge, Newark. Just New York. So, it runs in the blood.
How did you become an officer?
I actually started with the city in 1997. One of the first report takers that ever started. It started off as a grant, and it was in the blood. I was going to school for it, and I tested, and I was already working for the police department, so I was lucky enough to score high enough, and I was hired.
Was there ever a situation that made you question the career choice that you made?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of funny. It was my first day. My first day at work. Now, you have to remember, going back then, there weren't too many Latino officers. So, I must have been in the top 20, compared to where we are right now. And my very first night, before I even started my shift, I had a senior officer come and tell me, hey, I guess you're one of the lucky ones, who didn't get caught. And that just left a taste in my mouth. And I was like, oh, man, what am I getting myself into? So I had a lot of doubts that very first night.
Was there ever, or better yet, what was that moment that made you say, you know what, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life?
It's crazy enough. It was the very first night as well. So I had both experiences the very first night. I was with my FTO. First night, I was on the road for maybe my first hour, and got a call of a possible stolen motor vehicle, State Street, Pearl. And my FTO was telling me exactly what to do. Go up the street. Don't turn on your headlights. Keep your, don't have your sirens on. Don't alert anybody, all that other good stuff. That me being a rookie, I have no idea, but I'm following his direction. And anyway, at the end of the day, we ended up catching 3 people actually stealing a car. They blocked out their license plates. I got into my first foot pursuit as well, right into the tracks. I chased 2 guys. My FTO chased the other guy, and we arrested all three individuals. Of course, me being the rookie, I got all the paperwork, and I felt like I was writing for hours. But what made it all worth it, besides catching the bad guy, was the next day I was actually given my first commendation by the captain of the division, and I just knew at that point, guess what? Yeah, this is what I'm doing. I'm not going anywhere else.
Okay. So I have a series of questions that I'll be asking.
Okay.
And I want nothing but the truth from you.
Absolutely.
So thank you for the opportunity. And let's make this happen. So how did you find out of your suspension?
Oh, wow, we're getting right into it. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity of having me here.
No problem.
How did I first find out about my suspension, right? I was sitting in my office. Now we're going back to November 18th, 2019, 2020. I'm sorry, 2020. And an FOP representative came into the office and said, Cap, we have to go upstairs. We have to go to internal affairs. And I wasn't aware of anything that was going on. I wasn't aware of any cases that were happening. So on my way upstairs, I was basically told by my FOP rep, you're being suspended for an active investigation, in which I had no idea about.
Did anyone else know beforehand of your suspension prior that officer opening the door, coming inside the office and telling you, let's go upstairs?
Well, apparently the Office of Professional Standards was aware that I was being suspended. The chief of police knew I was being suspended. The division commander of internal affairs knew I was being suspended, and the deputy chief, I assume, knew. I can't say positive, that he did know. And then my representative. They all knew before I did.
Okay, so I want you to walk me through this. So now you have another high-ranking officer, walking in, notifying you. You're over at Internal Affairs. What's going through your head right now?
I was in a state of confusion. Currently there's litigation, so before I'm not really going to get into a lot of the details of it. But the city is obviously aware that I am in litigation against them. But again, I was completely blindsided. Did not have a clue, that this was happening, that my name was thrown out there, and that I allegedly committed a crime, which is not true.
So that was the walk-in. Walked in into Internal Affairs. Now we're walking out. Now we've been notified of the suspension. As you walk out of the office, full uniform, everybody else knows you're suspended. You're the last to know. What's going through your head at this time? Like, who are you thinking about calling? Who did you call?
So, okay. So before that, there was a reason I was given at that point as to why I was being suspended. And the reason was because there was an criminal allegation that was sent up to the prosecutor's office. Allegation, again, not that I did anything, but that they are going to be investigating of a possible crime. Possible. Again, So that's the reason why I am now being suspended from the Perth Amboy Police Department, because of that allegation and because of that investigation. I walk out of the office. I go back to my office now to collect all my items that I have to turn in, right? And as I get to my office, there was already an order put out by the chief of police out to all the members of the department that I was suspended and that I was not allowed in the building without the Office of Professional Standards, walking me around. I found it interesting that the timing of it, but it was there. It was there, and I was just confused once again because I didn't know exactly what was going on. So when I did walk out, after turning everything in, badge, gun, car, access card, I mean, just everything. I am trying to remember whether I received the call or I made the immediate call to a friend of mine, actually to a council member, Joe Pabone, and I'll say his name because he did receive the phone call. And I basically asked him if he knew, what was going on, because I sure didn't. And I knew that I couldn't go to my superiors because they're the ones that just suspended me. I couldn't call anybody over at City Hall because that's where the green light, to move forward went to. So I went to somebody who I know and I've always spoken to.
So now you're outside of the department.
Right.
Full uniform, unarmed, no vehicle.
Correct.
It was a cold day.
Very cold. It was November 18th.
How did you get home? Did anybody offer to take you home?
This is what I remember. I remember walking out of the department. I know I no longer have a car. I have absolutely no idea how I'm getting home. And I'm on the telephone trying to figure it out. And I'm walking and continue to walk. All of a sudden, I realize that I am near Convery Boulevard over by the Popeyes. And at this point, I'm like, oh, my God, how am I getting home? What's going on? I haven't received any phone calls from anybody from the department. No one at this point. So I decided I just picked up the telephone and I called an Uber. And that's how I got home that night.
Okay, so help me get a better perspective.
Okay.
You have a captain that has just been suspended on allegations, unarmed, full uniform, in an Uber. What's going through your head? Because that must have been like the longest ride to your house.
Oh, absolutely. What was going on through my mind? What wasn't going on through my mind at that time? It was everything from, am I reading this correct? Is somebody messing with me? I mean, I'm looking at reasons for suspensions. I did spend 5 years in internal affairs. I know what it takes to suspend an officer immediately. It was just one of the main things was like, okay, I'm getting closer to home. What is it that I'm going to tell my family? I can't make sense of it myself. So how am I going to make it, make any sense for them to understand? So that's what was going on through my head.
So now you're home.
Yes.
How did you feel while taking off that uniform? Every piece of clothing. It's like taking layers of all those years that you've given to your city, to the police department, and based on allegations, now here I am.
Sure.
So what was that feeling? Knowing that you might not necessarily be able to wear that uniform one more time.
Sure. So now my confusion now starts to turn to, it actually starts to turn to anger. I have worries. I have questions. And you're right. I had absolutely no idea that once I took this uniform off, was I ever going to be putting it back on? Because I am still not understanding what the entire allegation is about. It wasn't until later on and I started making phone calls and speaking to attorneys and all that good stuff that I did find out. But that's a scary thing. You've been on this job for over 20 years. You've done everything that you felt was as professional as can be, and now you're told to stay home because basically of a rumor. Just think about it. It's basically said, I think this person did this. Okay, great. Now you go home. And that's how I felt. And anybody would be confused at that point.
So everything is pitch dark. Your world basically is crumbling. All your friends back at the department, everyone, family members. Who outside of your family was the first person that called you to show support?
You asked me to tell you the truth. I don't even recall. I could tell you this much. I did not receive a call that night. I did not receive a call the next day. It was a week before Thanksgiving. I could tell you I didn't get a call during Thanksgiving week or the week after. So who was the first one to call me? I can't tell you. I don't know.
Let's get personal. How did this affect your family?
Look at AD. Just imagine coming home. You're in your career. You're at the end of your career or getting towards the end of your career. And you're being told you're going home for something you didn't do. Your family's confused. You're confused. You're upset. You have no idea if you're going to have a job anymore. That's where you are.
Did you ever feel like you let them down?
No, you see, that's the whole thing. My family is my support. That's my heart. They know I've never felt like I let them down. I did feel like I let myself down, by not seeing what was coming, because I have a lifetime of experience in that department, and I did not see this coming. So I let myself down.
So with all the experience that you have, reflecting back to that moment, seeing your family members, people close to you, your loved ones, and the effect that this had, was there ever a moment where you said, that's it, this is over, and there's nothing I could do about it?
Absolutely. You see, an allegation, just a mere allegation, can absolutely destroy your career. It's that saying, it's easier, to believe a lie than accept the truth type of situation. So once you have a cloud over your head or just an allegation that you may have done something wrong, that carries with you. So yes, from that moment on, that's exactly what I knew would actually happen.
So there's this one constant question that I've had ever since, and it's the one that's being repeated over and over. What were the charges?
Okay, to make it clear, I had no charges. There were never any charges. There were straight up allegations. Okay, so it was an allegation of a possible crime. And the possible crime was handing out a report to political candidates, which obviously, after the investigation that was done by the prosecutor's office, it never happened. So there were never any charges.
Knowing there were no charges and everything said was an allegation, proven to have been false, what do you think about another employee who was alleged to have committed a crime, given the benefit of the doubt and allowed to work during an investigation? Better yet, word has it that Helman Kaaba and the business administrator were alleged to have broken certain laws, and a complaint was submitted to the Attorney General's office. Comparing these two situations with yours, what would be the proper protocol as per the administration?
If we're all playing on the same level, if we're all playing on the same even field, right? And if one person gets told to go home, suspended, which the term really shouldn't be suspended, but you're stood home for 83 days, which is actually what happened with me. I was home for 83 days until I was told to come back to work. If there are those situations that are going on, which we know are going on, then yes, that employee right now should not be working. He should be home waiting for the outcome of this case. And if there are allegations and allegations made against the mayor or the BA and all that, maybe they should be sitting at home waiting for, because everything is criminal, waiting for the conclusion of that case, right? We know that's not going to happen. We know that's never going to happen. But in reality, what you're doing is you're basically calling somebody guilty, before being, proven guilty, because you are suffering, and it is suffering, by staying or being told to stay home without being proven guilty.
Very well. So, during the elections of 2020, I had also learned about your health issues. Do you mind me asking any questions about it?
No. I'm open about my health.
So, what kind of health issues had you had before your suspension?
All right, so before my suspension, I actually suffered a heart attack in December. Yes, I did have a heart attack at 46 years old in December of 2019. I was taken to the hospital. I did have an operation. 3 months later, just 3 months later, in March of 2020, while I was at work, I started not feeling well. That feeling was very familiar, and I was rushed to the hospital then. And on my way there, I suffered a second heart attack. So within 3 months of 2020, now mind you, you have to remember everything that's going on in the world, especially what's going on in New Jersey at the time. I was in the hospital when they shut down any visitors due to the coronavirus. That's the same exact time that I was there when I had to make the decisions, as to what the doctors were going to do, how we were going to move forward. They kept me away on a separate floor away from everyone because it was just a crazy time. It was the beginning of the blow up of COVID.
Okay, so that was pre-suspension. Now,
That's
post-suspension, how did you find out you were sick?
Wow. So, remember, I was suspended in November. In the beginning of December, I started having stomach pains, right? So I went and I saw my primary my primary doctor, who advised me to go ahead and get a sonogram done, in which I did. And it was at that point where they found a mass in my kidney during the sonogram. And I was told to go to Mount Sinai to get it checked out, to go see a specialist and all that good stuff. And from there, for the next, year and a half, it was just a roller coaster. It was, and when I mean it was a roller coaster, it was operation after operation after operation. I went from getting part of my kidney removed to then an issue with my throat, to then an issue with my nose, to then an issue, and it just goes on and on.
When did you realize how grave, health-wise, your situation was?
So when I was actually in Mount Sinai, any sort of mass is going to make you nervous. And after just suffering from 2 heart attacks, I was obviously concerned, saying, wait a second, I'm 46 years old. Something's not right. And I started asking questions, and I started asking questions of my specialists, and there was a lot of research being done at that point.
Did you at any point think any of your illnesses were work-related?
No, at that point, I didn't. And the point that I mean is when I finally made the decision to get the operation for my kidney, I didn't think it was work related at that point, but I did start doing, research as to why somebody so young would start, getting these major, illnesses.
Okay, so now I wanna speak on the World Trade Center Health Organization,
Okay.
and how it came to be. So, like, first of all, how did you hear about it?
You see it on the news. You always get all the commercials. Were you there? Were you in this area? But I was actually notified by my specialist in New York when he started looking at my previous history, recent history, that he started saying, wait a second, you're too young for this. It may be a good idea that you contact the World Trade Center. He did know that I was a police officer. He did know that I was sent there by my department.
But
And
how did he make? I mean, I'm not trying to cut you off.
sure.
Like, how long did it take him to make the connection? How did we arrive at this conclusion?
All right. So his experience, he does work at Mount Sinai. A lot of police officers from the NYPD do go there for multiple issues. And he just started putting the patterns of what was going on together. He sees the puzzle pieces, and he just guided me in the right direction and said, you need to contact the World Trade Health Center. Let's see, and let's do further tests.
So, what did the World Trade Center Health Organization determine, and what were their conclusions?
Now, one thing about the World Trade Center, they are very thorough, right? Obviously, they took their time, got information, got background information. How long was I at ground zero? Let's look at your past history. Let's look at what has been going on. Let's look at all the recent cases that have exploded over the last couple of years. And then they started classifying or certifying my conditions. And yes, they came down to the conclusion that the illnesses that I had up to that point were related to my exposure at 9/11.
Touching on this, such a touchy subject, and knowing that thousands of people have passed away ever since that tragic day that changed not only our country, but the world as we knew it. Hearing all that you've been through, health-wise, reminds me of that silent serial killer that has struck silently, taking the lives of countless first responders to this day, and continues on the hunt of those who live with the hopeless burden of losing their loved ones. After doing some research, I found that 72 law enforcement officers died in the line of duty on September 11th, 2001. Since that date, there have been over 300 law enforcement officers who have died from 9/11 related illnesses, and many hundreds more who are living with many different types of debilitating health issues. From what I know at this time, you are the only police officer from Perth Amboy who was affected by the elements on September 11th. We all pray that you recover and that there will be no others who will go through what you went through. So where do you go from here? Just knowing this information.
The moment I found out that this was all 9/11 related, and you could ask the officers, the first thing I did was I notified every single officer I went to 9/11 with to get themselves checked out, to actually fill out the paperwork, send it in, do everything possible, because obviously it took over 20 years for everything to happen, with me. And obviously I was worried. Obviously I'm concerned. So I went to them. I sent out the links. I did everything possible to help them out. Because the last thing I want them to do is go through everything that I went through, right? Again, I was dispatched there. Again, it took over 20 years for these illnesses to manifest. I went through my operations. I went through my recoveries. But the truth of the matter is that for the rest of my life, I am going to be dealing with this. I'm going to be dealing with the ideas of what's going to happen tomorrow, how much time I have here. And I just want to just quickly show you what my reality is, and this is where I am. Okay. So. What I'm going to show you right now is what I'm going to have to deal with for the rest of my life for doing my job. All right. And I'll show you this.
Jesus Christ.
Okay? All right. This is what I have to deal with. And I accept it. I did my job. But this is what I have to show my family. This is what I have to deal with. And this is the truth.
During the course of the day, I had the opportunity to privately view this clip prior to the recording of the interview. And I'd like to take this time to advise our viewers that certain pictures may be disturbing. Though these are troubling and private moments, Captain Pellot has agreed to share his journey with everyone. That was quite a journey.
Absolutely.
I could only imagine the feeling, the frustration. And reason being is because my father taught me that in order for you to come close to feeling what the other person is going through, all you need is imagination.
Right.
And I'm sorry, man. So we're going to start this next section with a bit of an inspiration. It's a short clip that I'm sure you're really going to enjoy.
Absolutely.
Roll the clip.
The division in this country and this city must end. Okay, this is nonsense already, and I'm asking each and every one of you to please pray for this city. I have an important message, statement to make. To the citizens and residents of Perth Amboy.
Speak at the microphone.
I wanted to do this standing, but however, I will have to be sitting. That way everyone could hear clearly. Jesus once said, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." John 8:32. In the winter of 2016, I decided to run for city council for the city of Perth Amboy, along with Mayor Wilbur Diaz and on her ticket. It was a decision that I made and one that now I unfortunately regret. It is with great sadness and disappointment that I have to write this letter. Anyone that knows me can vouch for my character. I believe that it is necessary to tell the entire truth and bring to light on what is really going on better, and so will all of you. Each and every one of you deserve better. So stop all these distractions so we can concentrate on several other important issues concerning the city of Perth Amboy. We need to stop urgent issues like high property taxes, our increased population, overcrowding of our schools, rezoning issues, parking issues, redevelopment issues, horrible street conditions, quality of life issues, lack of recreational space, old infrastructure issues, and lack of transparency.
Councilman
Well, I get a little emotional. I have no comment, Mr. President.
Seeing what we all just saw, and speaking about every questionable allegation, I also heard that you had to file a grievance against the administration.
Yes, sir.
And seeing you speak before the council and hearing how I heard you mention that something was resolved and that hopefully the second part of it was going to be resolved shortly. Here are my questions. Will you explain what you were talking about?
Sure. I went in front of the city council a couple of times, specifically that night that you heard me. what I was talking about was, as you're aware, and we spoke about this just previously, I went through 5 major surgeries in 21 months. And those surgeries needed time to recover. And, of course. And it wasn't until everything was certified through the World Trade Center that I was notified that it was a workman's comp. It was a workman's comp issue. So all the days that I was out, sick, were supposed to be returned, as injured on duty. So what I was speaking about was the first part of my payout was done, but I have been waiting to handle the second part or finish the second part, but it hasn't been done yet.
So why did you find it important to bring it before council?
Listen, I went through everyone, and I had shared with you some emails. I started this process back in November of 2021, where I started to ask the questions when I knew that it was a workman's comp issue. I did send it through the chain of command. It was sent to City Hall. City Hall did respond, with an answer that says, yes, all this time is going to be returned to you. Now, mind you, this is back in November of 2021. We're in September, basically now, of 2022, and it still hasn't been rectified. So I felt that it was important to go in front of the city council because maybe they would have some answers, or maybe they could get the answers that I have been denied since.
Okay, so who was involved in this issue?
Who wasn't involved? I mean, it started with my initial email to the chief of police, who turned around and sent it over to Maria Rivera over at City Hall, who turned around and reached out to D&H, which is the insurance company. The business administrator, Mr. Green, was well aware of what was going on. Sonia Nira, personnel officer, Mayor Caba, Mayor was well aware of it. Internal Affairs, Sergeant Wilson Tavares was well aware of this. My attorneys were well aware of this. So, I mean, I reached out to everyone. And at the end, even the city council was aware.
So how long was this going on for?
I started inquiring about this back in November of 2021. So it has been going on from that time till the day. As a matter of fact, I have a stack of emails here, and you can just go ahead and start reading. You could see who they were sent to, what the responses were. So I had multiple months of back and forth, requesting help, requesting answers. And just to make it more specific, it was sent out to the chief of police. It was sent out to personnel, business administrator, Maria Rivera over at City Hall. It was sent out to Internal Affairs. I gave them everything that they requested. Every single time I would submit something, it would be, but you're missing this. Or I would get no response at all. And as you could see, the last one was on May 31st, the day I retired. And the response to that was, well, now that, this issue is in a grievance, I can no longer contact you. Please speak to the attorneys.
So May 31st. Who do you believe is responsible for all of this, and what do you have to back up your opinion?
This gets interesting, all right, because I did start in November, right? I did send it through my chain. The chief immediately sends it over to the person who he believes is going to give him the right answer, because I guess he just didn't have the answer to it. So it was sent to City Hall, and immediately City Hall gave them the response of, yes, you are owed these days. Yes, your days will be changed. And the only thing you have to do is submit your doctor's notes or documentation that corresponds with the dates that you were out. All right. So again, I thought it was as simple as that. So I reviewed all the paperwork with the Office of Professional Standards, and that's where something got mixed up or something just went left. All right. So then you had the business administrator's hands in it. You had the mayor's hands in it. And the one thing that I actually find funny is I produced not only what they asked, but I also showed them, the law. I also showed them my contracts. I also showed them past practice. So who's involved? Everyone.
So what was the reasoning for not doing it before you retired?
You see, that's once again, that's what I don't understand, because somebody's in charge of the records. Am I correct? Somebody is in charge of them being accurate. Somebody's in charge of finances. Somebody's in charge of departments. Why wasn't it done before retirement? I wasn't even given an answer why it was denied in the first place.
Could you please explain to me where you're at now with your current situation?
Currently, we're still in the grievance process, but it has now moved up to the next step, which is arbitration, which is now the city has to have their attorneys. I have my attorneys, and now we're going to go speak to an arbitrator. But just to make it a little bit more clear, I do have a clip that kind of explains things a little bit better. So if you want to watch it with me.
So what she just told us is that the administration is refusing to follow their legal obligations to pay someone who suffered through multiple operations because you did your job. Not only legally right, but morally, it's the right thing to do. Instead, they will be paying attorneys and possibly doctors, but yet they haven't even given a reason for their decision. Something is so terribly wrong here, and I hope people ask questions. So, let's move on to the latest issue with you. You know, the one you brought up in front of the city council in June. You went up before city council and asked them about certain laws, rules, or ordinances regarding a phone call that was made by the city. Let's get into the questions.
Sure.
What made you go in front of the council and ask about an issue so personal to most people?
This journey, and my job, the things that I've done, the things that I've been through, we expect to be treated a certain way. Employees are expected to be treated a certain way. And this is something that was so personal to me that when I found out that a phone call had been made to my doctor, I immediately took it in front of the business administrator. I didn't wait. It was that same day. I also spoke to the mayor about it as well. Getting absolutely nothing but resistance from them, yes, I was going to notify the council once again because I was given no legitimate answer as to why they did this.
So what did you specifically ask for?
AD, I'm not going to paraphrase what I said because everything is recorded during these meetings. So I do have a clip, and I want you to hear it for yourselves.
Hopefully somebody can give me an answer, and I have to read this. Is there a federal law, state law, city ordinance, or employee policy that would allow a mayor to authorize a business administrator to contact a chief of police who then orders an officer to contact and request in writing from a private mental health specialist, whether it's a therapist, psychiatrist, or psychologist, if the patient under their care is a danger to themselves or others for no other reason than that he has issued a gun as part of his daily duties? Hopefully that, I know it was a long question, but in other words, can your employer call your psychologist or your psychiatrist and ask, are you a danger to yourself or anyone else? Now, there's some facts before you answer, okay? The facts are you were not sent by your employer. You went on your own, which is a major factor. We provided a doctor's note already to the city with additional information as to why they're seeing a doctor, but yet that phone call is still made without the permission of the employee. So I just want to know, is there an exception to that just because you're a police officer? And I bring it up because there was a lot of things tonight with mental health. And when we talk about mental health, we think about the people out in the, the citizens and stuff. But we also have a lot of employees who go through traumatic events and such who would like to go look for help, but may be afraid, that their employer is going to give a call to one of their doctors and just may affect where they are in their jobs, if they could be transferred, if they can get any type of promotion or anything like that, just because of the stigma that is stuck when somebody goes through a traumatic event and is looking for some type of therapy. So I would like to know, is there an exception to any of this? Something that would bypass HIPAA, something that would bypass the ADA, and other laws that protect the patient doctor confidentiality.
All right, do you want an answer to that?
I would love an answer to that.
Okay, then just give us a second.
So what type of response did you get from the council?
It was an interesting response, and I really want you to watch it. So
Caregiver about an employee?
That's what I'm going to look at. I don't know the specifics of the guideline. I know the guidelines exist. I don't know what the specifics are at the top of my head, but it's.
When do you
something I
think
can
you
look
could get back to the council on that?
into before the next meeting.
All right, well, here's a more direct question. This actually happened to me. So were you ever notified that this was going to happen? Yes, sir.
Specifically? No.
No, okay. So then this was just done at the whim of someone without any type of legal, counseling or legal advice?
That may or may not be true. The city has outside counsel for certain items, so.
Sure.
Another question that I can
I
follow
just
up.
thought that it would go right to the law director when you're dealing with employees instead of an outside agency. Right.
Could it possibly create a situation where it exposes the city?
Yeah, so I was going to say, if you want me to address it, you brought up your name, I wouldn't have done that, but I will say exactly.
So what was the response from the administration?
AD, you're going to love this. And you really need to hear it with your own ears. So let's go to this clip.
Be transparent. This is totally my decision. You want me to continue to go further, I will. Sure. I really don't like them personally, but okay. So I had information where I learned someone was going to, a police officer who has a gun was going to a psychiatrist.
Was that
for
hearsay? Was that on the street?
No, I
kind
said
of
it was given to me that he was going to see a psychiatrist.
Mhm.
If that individual, in other words, if there was a military person that has a gun and I found out he's going to a psychiatrist where he may be a danger to himself or others, whether he's killing his family or killing an individual that's up there in the street when he's arresting him, I have to take that into consideration. Because the next thing, if something did happen, you would say, Mike Green, what did you know? What did you do about it? And when did you know about it? So I had to take this affirmative step to make sure that this individual was not a danger to himself, his family, since he's carrying a service revolver provided by the residents of Perth Amboy. So I made that decision to find out. Before something egregious would happen again, we never know what's going to happen, just like what happened down in Texas. You never thought in a million years there would be somebody walking there and shoot school children. However, once I find out that somebody's going to see a psychiatrist, I have to take that step. Now, if it was just a regular employee without a gun, that's a different situation. But
All right.
that's right.
So I would just.
And may I just
Go ahead.
really quickly state, and as per the ADA, employees can always act when there is a clear safety concern, but these actions must be grounded in evidence. All right, there was zero evidence. Also, psychiatrists, therapists, and psychologists have a duty to warn. They have a duty to warn your employer, the police department, if you make any statements during your sessions that you are going to harm yourself or anyone else. And I can guarantee you that my psychiatrist never called the city and advised them of that. So with that, you basically just violated the ADA and HIPAA laws.
I don't think that the business administrator just woke up one day 2 months after he was emailed about you being out until your retirement date. Is it possible that there were any reasonings to persuade this phone call being made? And are there any valid reasons
let's look at this for a second. I notify you in March that I'm going to be out until my retirement date. The letter is sent to City Hall as requested. It's sent to personnel. It's sent to the business administrator. It's sent to Maria Rivera, who initially requests it. Now this is in March. My doctor receives a phone call in May, 2 weeks before I retire. 2 weeks before I retire. Okay, I know everybody starts talking about safety concerns, which goes back to my initial question. But why did it take 2.5 months? So I see where your question is. Why did it take 2.5 months to make that call? Well, let's follow the steps. It wasn't until more than 2 months after I notified them that my department, my chief, and the Office of Professional Standards were finally notified that I was out because of these reasons. And then all of a sudden the questions come up. You know, the questions of safety come up. The questions of let's make sure that everything is okay. I'm going to let you be the judge of this part. We're going to play a clip, all right, because this is the part where the business administrator asks the chief of police to jump in. So let's play this clip.
One in the city administration can reach out to a psychiatrist or psychologist for, if a police officer is seeing one. Do we have a written policy as to who can approach?
I'll let the chief, because he's on, and he can talk about uniformed personnel and how that distinguishes. Chief?
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me okay?
You're a little low in volume. I don't know if you could turn it up.
Okay. See what a little better now?
No. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. It may be the computer that I'm on. Am I being told that I have the ability to speak on this particular incident?
Yes.
Okay. To answer your question, Councilman, with respect to someone that's going to be out. Someone that's out for an extended period of time, and this is city policy here in the city and in the police department. Someone's going to be out for an extended period of time, as you said, yes. They call us, tell us they're going to be out. They need to provide a doctor's note. And that doctor's note generally says, ex-employee is under our care and supervision at this time. This, for this date, can be into work, cannot be into work. And generally at the bottom of those notes, it says, should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact my office at the above shown address. So if there were any clarifications that we would need, i.e. Someone has a broken arm, can they come to work? Can they provide a function here in the police department with a broken arm? Then yes, they can. What are the restrictions? What are those? So that's when we have the conversation with the physicians, just like we would for workman's comp, or for if someone were to be hurt and or injured off duty. So that's generally what we do in the situations of when someone needs to be out on a medical reason.
Comment on this one because he brought up specifically. So comment specifically on this case. He brought it up.
Okay. Specifically, the note did say psychiatric care since a specific date and needs to be on a medical leave of absence. And I'll say what it says. Should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact my office at the above shown address. So we only followed the doctor's orders and contacted the above physician at that. There was anything about any specificities of treatment protocols or anything else. Just as the business administrator asked, danger to self or others with a weapon. That was it. Nothing else. No treatment notes. No anything else. Just that.
Okay, so then you were directed by the business administrator to contact the doctor prior to getting that letter?
No, that was the letter. That was response to the letter that was received. A letter was received here because an employee was out for an extended period of time, which we do get a note for, a doctor's note, just as the councilman said. We got the doctor's note. We were reacting to that doctor's note.
Okay.
That we received.
Okay.
That was provided by the employee.
So the employee reached out to his physician to get a letter originally, right? No? You did?
We were provided with the letter. I don't know whether it's given to him to reach out, however, but we were provided with the letter by the employee. Yes.
Yeah, okay, no, I'm just, Mr. Pellet's in the room, and I just wanted to confirm that he reached out to his doctor, the doctor wrote the note, sent it to you, then I guess a phone call was made to the doctor to find out whether he was, and the question was asked, whether he was a danger to himself or others?
Reiterating the point that he is a police officer, he does have a weapon. And again, I didn't make the call, so I'm paraphrasing now, but this is what I understood to confirm the fact that this individual is a police officer. As part of the duties, he does have a weapon. And, you know, of course, and the captain is exactly right as far as duty to act. You're absolutely correct. But again, I don't know what that doctor knows. I don't know if the doctor knows that he has weapons or any of that stuff. So that's what the internal affairs sergeant, when he contacted them, and reiterated the fact that to know, make sure the doctor knows that he does carry weapons.
Chief, so okay, so I'm just trying to get a clarification for the council. So you did not make any of these phone calls. Do we know who did make the phone call? Mr. Green, who made the phone call?
It was done by our internal affairs, Sergeant Tavares.
Oh, okay. All right, internal affairs made the phone call. Okay.
Yes.
And
That's who generally.
And I can only assume that obviously there's a doctor-patient relationship, that there's, you know, the doctor can't divulge anything even to internal affairs, I would imagine. It can only be maybe a yes or no answer.
Correct. So any HIPAA violations would have been created by the doctor, if anything, because they know what their abilities are to speak about and not. So again, it was just following the doctor's orders here, where it said, should you have any questions, please contact my office, and that's what was done.
Okay. Mr. Pellot, do you have anything further you'd like to add to that?
After watching the video and listening to the business administrator, counsel, law director, and the chief of police back and forth, what's your take on that?
Wow, there was really a lot. There was really a lot behind this. First, I take offense to some of the comments that were made by the business administrator. And I believe it was earlier on when he compared.
Uvalde?
Yes, yes, yes.
I found it irresponsible.
Yes, absolutely. Comparing the two, an officer seeking help on his own and comparing a mass shooting is
18-year-old,
right,
unstable.
It's just, I mean, it's beyond words to even make that statement. I would like to get into what the chief said, because there was a lot, and he was speaking really fast, so maybe it was missed by a lot of people. Now, one of the things that he said was that a phone call had to be made because they needed to know what my restrictions were, right? He didn't completely read the entire doctor's note, because my doctor's note said, okay, I'm out from March 1st till June 1st. What restrictions am I going to need if I'm not returning? So what's the reason for the phone call? You know, I mean, that's just one of my points. The second one was, if you were going to make that phone call to a doctor, just like he said that is normally done, that's done because an employee actually came back and asked, either he was cleared by his doctor to return, or he was asking for an accommodation, which then is requested. Okay, can you carry a gun? Can you stand up for 10 hours or whatever it is? But once again, I was not returning. So what is the reason for the phone call? A third one was, and he stated that he was not aware of what the doctors knew, that I was a law enforcement officer, that I had carried a gun. It's not your responsibility to call a doctor to notify them because you're not sure if the doctor knows about that.
But did you go to the doctor on your own, or were you sent?
Once again, I went on my own. I went on my own. I went to seek treatment. It was advised for me to do it by the World Trade Health Organization, both because of the past incidents and even the current incidents that have been happening. So they didn't even have a right, like it states, you don't even have a right to know that I am going. Nevertheless, well, let me call a doctor to make sure. But and AD, this is the part that really flips me out and that really bothers me. Okay? Why didn't I receive a phone call from either the chief, from either internal affairs, from either any high official in either City Hall or the police department simply asking me, hey, listen, you're going through this? We'll feel more comfortable if you turn your gun in. What is the problem with that? But instead, you go behind and you call this doctor. Now you have problems. So that's what I would like to say about that part.
Okay, so I have somewhat of a rhetorical question. Actually, it's just a question in itself. Did you ever threaten anybody? Was there ever a complaint or grievance, anything on you that justified the administration or whoever it was calling your psychiatrist?
Absolutely not. The truth is, 24 years and 8 months, I never received a demeanor complaint. No one from the city came and complained that I treated them differently, that I spoke to them, in a manner that wasn't correct, that I've used excessive force or I've used something else that I shouldn't have, been using, anything like that. There was no concern to even make that phone call. And then to try to have excuses to justify the cause are basically just a joke.
But did you ever receive a clear answer as to there being an exception because maybe you are a police officer?
Listen, I asked the question in June, right? You were there.
Yeah.
I asked the question in June. I asked the council. I asked the council president. The council president asked the law director. The law director said he would have an answer by next meeting. I know that they've had 2 meetings since, and I still have not received an answer.
Okay, so you made a comment, and I'm not going to lie, I was shocked. And it was something that had to do with you having a conversation with the mayor and him being deliberate and very clear with the statements that he made during the conversation.
Right.
So would you mind expanding on that?
Sure. All right. And before I get into it, I'm just going to let you know. I did have a couple of recordings between the mayor and myself. in which I am a part of the whole thing. I consented to record myself so that I can go back and get answers or make sure that I heard things correctly, since I haven't received any answers from anybody else. So this was done on my last day, and I'm not going to paraphrase what he said. I'm not going to even attempt to do that. I'm just going to let you hear, what he said. So at that point, let's play that clip.
Were you aware that employees from the city called my doctors to find out if I was a threat to myself or anybody else?
I wasn't aware of that.
Okay. Are you aware of how many laws were broken?
I'm not sure all the details, but it was, according to what I know, is standard practice. Just because the position you're in, you have a firearm, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah. Especially in
So it's
public safety.
and it has been done. You're not the first, and you're not going to be the last.
Was the mayor receptive to your questions, to how all of this was affecting you?
No, absolutely not. I mean, you heard it out of his mouth. Exactly. It sounded basically like the same script that I got from the business administrator at the council meeting. And yeah, no, he wasn't receptive, but he did make a couple of other comments, and that are relevant to this. So I want you to hear this.
You see what I'm
You
saying,
see something,
Sonia?
You see something wrong with.
I see something wrong with the phone call.
Really?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Do you know why? Because if there is a worry about me getting disarmed, there are ways to do it. Okay, we have Attorney General guidelines, which gives you the rights to disarm me for certain reasons. If I was involved in a shooting, wasn't involved in a shooting. If I was charged with a crime, wasn't charged with a crime. If the city sent me to a psychiatrist and that psychiatrist turned around and said, I have an issue, you have a right to disarm me. If my actions around work were worrisome to a bunch of people, everything was documented, you have a right to disarm me. You see what I'm saying? None of those things happen. Finally, the doctors have an obligation by law to notify. Okay, they have a duty to notify. They will lose their license if they do not notify, your employer, especially if you're a police officer, if you have made comments that are a danger to himself or for anyone else. I can guarantee my doctor has never called. So he put his license on the line because he knows that threat was never there. So all those procedures are there for that reason. So yes, to violate, and again, I will use violate, that privacy, who's going to go seek help if they know that the city's going to call and check up to see if they're okay or not? You're pushing.
You know what?
You're pushing.
I believe, like I said, you're not the first and you won't be the last. It was the doctor gave a vague response.
Mhm.
It was vague.
Right.
And if his
it's our responsibility.
if
to
his
ensure.
response was
And
vague,
I'm not saying with you. I'm
Right.
saying in general, anyone with a firearm, take yourself out of this.
right.
You know, anyone with a firearm, if we get a vague response from a doctor saying that you are getting treated for psychiatric help, guess what?
Because he understands what the privacy is. He understands what the privacy is. The city, I submitted to the city what my diagnosis and what my certifications were. The city was well aware. I have a copy of it. This is what I was being treated for. Well aware of what it is. Oh, okay. All right. This is related to this.
So help me understand something. Why do you think there's such a disconnect between the administration, your personal concerns, and the concerns of many other employees that are being ignored on a daily basis?
Working on the inside, you know, for a long time and seeing what's currently going on, there is a major breakdown. But I believe that the major breakdown is that there are people who are being given the authority to make decisions that really shouldn't be. I mean, we elect certain people, and they're the ones that should be making the decisions. But from what I'm seeing and from what I've seen is that every time I ask a specific question, or anytime an employee comes up to me and said, hey, I went there and I asked a specific question, the default seems to be wait till we get a response from the attorneys, you know, and that's a problem. That's a problem because we didn't elect attorneys. We elected people to make these decisions. And you know what? I get, once again, I just want you to listen to this clip.
You putting so much power. You're making it seem like I have all this power, right?
You do.
I don't. Okay. In the end of the day, every decision that I make needs to be calculated, and I have to make sure I listen to my legal team, and it's in the best interest of the city.
Listen.
And you know, I would say that even for myself, right? Even for myself, yes, I'm employed, but I have to take the advice of my legal.
I'm gonna let you answer that last question.
So what does that make you? That makes you incompetent in my world. So with all of this information that you've shared thus far, there's only like one question that keeps popping up. The more I hear clips, the more I view videos. Is the city supposed to be getting ready for possibly another lawsuit?
That's a good question. I'm going to repeat what the mayor said. Okay? I'm going to listen to my attorneys. So you take from that.
Okay. Inconclusive. But I want to thank you for sharing all the trials and tribulations, everything you've gone through during the past 2 years, these last 2 years. Is there anything you might want to say to any other officer or city employee that might be watching this and might be going through the same thing that you've gone through?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this goes out to the employees. This goes out to the police department, fire department, all the other guys out there. Listen, understand that this government works for you. It's not the other way around. You know, there's a lot more of us than they are of them, and we put them in those positions. And it kind of, I know it's been a long time that we've had some sort of history or civics lesson, but it reminds me of our rights, the rights that we have, what our Creator has endowed us with, you know, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we establish these governments to make sure that these rights are upheld. And when they're not, we could either change it or abolish it. It's your decision, you know, as to what you're going to do. Fight for your rights. Don't let anybody step on them. Don't be afraid of those words. What is it that's in their policy? You know, at will workers. You know, don't let that scare you. Demand more from your unions. Demand more from your supervisors, and expect more from the administration. So with that, everyone, good luck, and you always know that I'm going to be here for you.
All right. So this concludes our sit down. I know we've gone back and forth, or basically I've gone back and forth. I know I gave you a nice little nickname. And I know this is not a 60 Minutes or First Take or whatever it is.
Yes.
I'm neither a reporter or a journalist, right? So I don't think you are Mr. Boring. I don't think you are borderline sociopathic. I think you're a survivor. I think you're thorough.
Thank you.
And I respect your gangster.
Thank you.
Right? Because to be able to go through all of these hurdles, which, by the way, I do believe you're being targeted. Health, family, career. You've done all right for yourself.
I'm still here.
So thank you for the sit down.
Thank you for having me.
Be safe, sir.
Thank you. And everyone, good night.
It's going on 21 years that both citizens and employees answered the call for assistance in the worst terror attack on our nation's land. 6 police officers from our city were sent to assist in any manner possible, and all 6 returned changed men in one form or another. Retired Sergeant John Marcinko Sr., Retired Captain Miguel Pellot Jr., Retired Sergeant Ricky Zaleski, Captain Eddie Padilla, Lieutenant Frank Zegg, and Lieutenant Carmelo Jimenez. Each did their job with courage, with grace, tenacity, and humility. Now, over the next 20 years, we all read and heard the saying, "We will never forget." It is plastered on our websites, it's written on flyers, and spoken time and time again during our 9/11 remembrance ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here simply to say that I had hopes that these weren't just mere words heard once a year, but that these words would produce positive actions for those who lost not only family members, but also those who are currently sick and dying today for doing their jobs. It's time to do your job.